relationships ending and challenges with your family becoming more obvious, the more conscious and awake that you become, the more things that never used to bother you start to bother you. And you start to notice these patterns and synchronicities that are playing out in a way that you don't prefer anymore. And something that used to make you really happy, or somebody that used to make you really happy and somebody that you used to have a lot in common with, no longer resonates with you in the way that they used to. And I've had that where I've had a long-term relationship of 5 years and we actually bought a house together, and I ended it not long after we moved into that house, because I realized really quickly that I'm like, oh my God, we are nothing alike anymore. And it was because of all these changes that I was making within myself. You know, all the issues that I had used to be quite a good match with this person. And then all of a sudden I started letting go of some limiting beliefs and started moving towards a life that was more freeing and more open. And then it just became obvious that we weren't really working anymore, because I didn't see the world the way that I used to, you know, and they still did. And that's a big part of this transformational journey, is learning that you can't take everyone with you, and that some of those relationships that you have with people are going to have to either transform or dissolve, and that's okay. And it's not a dictation of your worth if you go through a period of time where you don't have any friends and where you don't really feel like spending time with family or whatever it might be. Like, that lonely chapter is actually one of the most beautiful gifts that you can be given, because it allows you the space to get to know yourself better and get to learn who you are, independent of all these relationships and independent of all these influences that we have in our lives. And I loved this time of my life because it was damn terrifying though. Like let me clarify, it wasn't comfortable the whole time, and I didn't actually know about this lonely chapter. I remember hearing a YouTube video about it, and I was like, oh my God, that is exactly what I'm going through right now. And it's that space of time where you're letting go of old relationships, adopting a new relationship with yourself, and then once that is like secure, then you start to attract long-term relationships that reflect this new version of yourself. But that time in the middle there, it's this time of where the old is dying off and the new is being created. And so there's momentum slowing down with the old and momentum speeding up with the new. But until you start to get enough traction with this new version of yourself, there can be a time of even relationships can still come in, but they may be short-lived. And I had that where I had some friendships show up, but they didn't last very long, because they were great. They were like a mirror of where I was at in that given moment. And then I was still going through those shifts and through those transformations, and some of those relationships didn't go any further. But that also brings me to the point of soul contracts aren't always forever. And people come into your life and they teach you something, and you have this a joyful experience with them, or maybe you have a really challenging experience with them, and then the need for them to be in your life anymore ceases, and so they go away, or the relationship ends, or you decide to end the relationship, or whatever it might be. And it needs to be okay. It needs to be all right that not every relationship lasts forever, and that you can accept that it's not a dictation of your worth if somebody leaves your life. And sometimes it's that old saying, one door closes, another one opens. We can't just keep opening doors constantly and not closing any doors, or else we won't have enough time in our day-to-day experience to be able to give enough attention to all these open doors. So you have to make peace with the idea that some doors are going to close, and that it might actually be the very best thing for you, and it might be the best thing for that person. Another thing I like to discuss is that sometimes the kindest thing that you can do for somebody is to remove yourself from their life, because you sticking around because you think they need you to, that's not empowering at all. You need to stay true to what's good for you, because if you stay in somebody's life because they need you, that's like you saying that they don't have enough of their own inner guidance or their own inner strength, or that they are vulnerable in some way that only you can fix that, which is completely not true, because they are the only ones that can actually change their experience. Yes, you might add to their experience and you might provide some support or some relief, but if it is at the expense of your happiness and your joy and your preference, then it's not worth it, because that's actually teaching that person that they need to depend on you, when really they really need to depend on themselves. And so even if you leave somebody's life, and that means that they go through the dark night of the soul, let that be a good thing. Sometimes somebody going through a challenge is not a bad thing. In fact, nearly every single time it's not a bad thing to go through a challenge, because it's through those challenging experiences that we grow and we find more of ourselves and we find more peace and more joy because of the challenge that we went through. Just like going to gym and having a workout, just because you're in pain when you're doing a bunch of reps, that doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. That means you're doing it right. And that pain is only short-lived, but the results of that experience are longer. And that's the same with all the challenges that we have in our lives. As long as we don't stay stuck in a challenge for a long time and we don't realize what it's trying to teach us and just keep reliving it over and over and over again, then the challenges in our lives can be absolutely wonderful. And even if you do get stuck in a challenge for a very long time, that can still serve you incredibly well, because the law of polarity exists. So for whatever challenge that you go through, there is an equal opposite positive effect from that challenge. I like to call this the Slingshot Theory, and I often describe this to people who have gone through, especially people that have gone through significant amounts of trauma in their earlier years. I like to be like, well, great. You know why that's great? Because slingshot. So you have a slingshot and you're pulling it back further and further and further. And you can imagine the further back you pull is sort of like a representation of how much trauma or how many challenges this person is going through, like how much pain they're going through. The further you pull back, all you have to do is let go and you will go flying forward. And so the further you come back, the further forward you go. But the further, like if you don't only come back a little, you only go forward a little. So it's relative, and you don't need to see challenges as a bad thing, because the more pain that you have been through, then there is more joy available to you. But it doesn't mean that the people that haven't gone through significant amount of pain don't experience relative joy, because if they haven't had that much pain, then it's kind of the difference between like going up a hill like this and then going up a hill like this. You know, we're all going in the same direction. It just depends on how you experience it. Kind of like if you were to fast for a few days, when you eat that meal, the taste and the joy from that meal that you're having is going to be very significant in comparison to somebody who's been eating all day, every day. Their taste buds aren't going to be as sensitive as the person who had a fast for a few days. And there's no right or wrong. You don't have to go through significant amount of pain to experience joy, just like the person who chooses to eat every day versus the person who fasts and then has a meal. Like that's the same amount of pleasure, it's just divvied out over different periods of time. And that's what the polarity is trying to say, is that for every negative reaction, there is an equal positive reaction. And so my passion is helping people to realize how to flip their pain into positivity and how to get the joy out of the negative experience that caused a lot of turmoil in their life. And a big part of that is about letting go, and also knowing that you have the ability to focus in a way that's actually going to bring to you the positive experience. Because a lot of us can become very, very obsessed with what is, and it's understandable. Like it's can be quite a challenge to take your attention away from something that is right in front of your face and very, very real for you. But that's why I like to talk about the imagination and about using your focus in a way that's not focused on the things that you don't prefer, because there's going to be a time, that time of a period of time in your life where things haven't changed yet, but your mind and your focus is starting to change. But that can take a little bit of time to translate into physical reality. And a lot of that has to do with the momentum that you have going. So for example, say if my whole life I believed that I was because I had an eating disorder growing up. So my whole life I believed that I wasn't good enough. So then I started to change my mind, which I did a few years ago, where I started to entertain the idea that maybe I was good enough, but there wasn't enough momentum going in that direction for it to start to physically translate in my external reality consistently. And that's key, because it was starting to show up. Like I was starting to have moments of relief and moment of realization that, oh, maybe I am good enough as I am. But then there was a lot of momentum in the other direction still happening. So there was this period of time where it was kind of like, yay, and then oh, and then yay, and then oh. And it's like, so, and then over time, I have slowly molded my mind and my perception of myself to the point now where I am far more often than not appreciating who I am and what I look like and all the ins and outs of what the eating disorder sort of highlighted for me. And so my sense of self-worth is predominantly up here, whereas it used to be predominantly down here. But there's a period of time where it would sort of chop and change between the two of them. And that's kind of like this lonely chapter that I'm talking about. Is it's that period of time where you haven't fully grasped this new identity that you are trying to adopt for yourself. And this video is just to give you a little bit of encouragement and to not lose heart, because it is coming to you. Those people that you will resonate with are coming to you, and they're going to come into your experience. But just to enjoy and appreciate this time that you have on your own to really get to know yourself and to nurture the one most important relationship in this world, and that is the relationship with yourself. That relationship with yourself needs to come above any other relationship in your life, because if you put other people above, if you put your relationship with your partner or with your mum or with your dad or with your sister or friends or whatever, if you prioritize your relationship with them over your relationship with yourself, then it's going to cause a lot of instability in your life, and you're then going to put more pressure on those relationships if you negate the one that's most important, which is that one with yourself. And that's why I was saying that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is to leave somebody to their own devices. If it's no longer in alignment with you, you're better off leading by example and leaving them behind if that's what's going to be best for you. And that is actually something that I have had to do with a bunch of people, and it was really hard to do because I was quite empathetic and taking on sometimes a caretaker role with those people. And I was, getting my identity from helping them and from, being a bright light in their life. But when it was taking from me more than it was giving back to me, I had to pull back my energy. And that didn't feel good at first, because I was like, oh, I think they need me, but they don't need you. They only need themselves. And sometimes you removing yourself from their life actually gives them the gift of finding themselves, because how can they do it if you're constantly giving every part of yourself to them? If you are making you're their number one source of comfort and clarity, you can't be that for anyone else except for yourself. So if you are going through the lonely chapter right now, just take solace in knowing that it is temporary, and don't focus on it as much as focusing on the benefits of being alone and the benefits of having this time to yourself. And also start to imagine what it's going to be like to meet your people, to meet those people that are going to light you up, that are going to understand you, and that are going to share similar interests with you, because they're coming. It just takes, you want to be ready for them anyway. You don't want to meet them before you're ready, because otherwise they won't stick around very long. And that's sort of why that lonely chapter is necessary, that transformational period, because you're building a structure and it's not yet stable. So don't rush this process. It will come. But the way to bring it closer to you faster is by trusting that it will come at the right time, and by not putting pressure on yourself to be, where you're going yet, like to be comfortable with where you are right now, and just to trust that you will go and you will meet the right people at the right time, and just to appreciate this time on your own.